Opinion hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to Mindset Marketing Mastery, the show that brings you the top speakers in the marketing and video industry. With your host, Marie Mason.
Everyone, and welcome back. Oh my gosh, so good to have you, Dr. Ravshir. And this, let me give you the quick intro, because I just want to. Usually you're backstage before we go, and we're doing things a little differently this season, just because we're trying different things, right? We're trying to be experimental. So, welcome back to the Marketing Mindset Mastery Radio Show with my host. I am your host, Marie Mason. Our lovely and talented Plinny Phoenix is going to be a little bit delayed today. She's got some conflicts on her calendar, and that happens, especially since we just are switching to the new time. So welcome to the 11 o'clock time for that show. Oh my gosh, we got a great show lined up for you, and I can't wait to get started. So before we get started, I do have some quick tips I'm going to share with you, and I'm going to sit there and I'm going to give you a different perspective. We've been talking a lot about marketing and voice in the last couple of months, so I'm going to actually give you a different spin today. And it is when you are going to talk to your radio show guests, when you're going to do podcasting, for example. We're going to do some podcast tips since we're all going to stick with video focus. One of the things you want to do is you want to make sure that you get on a call with them, and Dr. Raji, is it Ravi? Is that what I said right? How do I pronounce it?
Ravshir.
Ravshir. Yeah, she actually can vouch for this process. We get on a call beforehand, a T-chat, just to make sure that, we get the right, we have the same audience in mind, that we can also both add value to each other and also connect and stuff like that. And then what we do is we have one of those. So basically, you just want to be able to get on a quick call with them just to kind of see how it's going to work. And then what you do is you want to make sure you send them, get some contact information and a quick information about their topic, etc., and a bio and topic title. And then what you want to do is follow up with them and make sure that you get connected. And that's pretty much my process for the show. So we are always looking for speakers on the show. So I want to put in a plug in for that. So always reach out to me. You could go to calendly.com/Marie V. Mason, or just message me on the W4CY page and or on my website at libertyvirtualsolutions.com, and we will be happy to talk to you about being a guest on the show. So with that, just want to say welcome back to the Marketing Mindset Mastery Radio Show. And again, I'm your host, Marie Mason. And our guest today is none other than the lovely and talented Dr. Ravshir Ravshir. I'm going to say that 100 times before I get it right. Gill, and she is a medical doctor, and she is a CEO and founder of Fealtalk from Toronto, Canada. So we're on the same continent, which is awesome. And then today's topic is on overcome anxiety to get back to normal, because we've been dealing with a lot of uncertainty in the last couple of years, and we're starting to have to create another new normal. Kids are going back to school in person in most places. We're dealing with that anxiety these days. Parents are having to go back in person and work. So, and we've had kind of a little break from reality for a while, or maybe we're getting a break from reality. I don't know. Depends on your perspective. So I am sure that we're going to get some really cool action steps and some really good tips on how we can normalize our lives and create that natural rhythm for our families, because it's all about setting that up properly. So make sure you're listening to our show at our new time at 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern, and on Thursdays, and W4CY.com. So take it away, Ravshir. I'm so glad you're here.
Oh, thank you. I just want to start off by saying thank you. And As you guys probably already know, Marie is amazing.
Aw.
And a lot of the insight that she has, especially how she gears these topics, is super organized and it's very easy to digest.
Aw.
So I
Thank
just
you.
wanted to start with that.
Oh, you're so sweet. I really just try my best. That's all. I just want to make sure that, we're all focused on helping our audience gain as much clarity and action steps that they need to have and just add a lot of value. So it just helps for me to be organized because I can get off tangents. So it just helps if I'm organized. So there you go. But thank you for the sweet compliment. But we're so glad to have you on the show and can't wait to hear your topics. So yeah, let's go ahead and get a little background information. What decided to have you be a doctor? I mean, what kind of doctor are you? Just so we're specific on that.
So, essentially, I had kind of the typical story where a child just wants to help out and help other individuals heal in some sort of way. So that was my main path in the beginning. I just wanted to be able to help, and I myself went through medical school and was actually doing my training in Houston, Texas, and that's when I myself, for the first time in my life, was like, okay, I've clearly experiencing some mental health related issues, so I needed to take a little bit of a break. That's kind of where, I'm coming from. And in the midst of all of that, I realized that there's just a lot of gaps in our mental health system. And I think that a lot of individuals, especially during these trying times, can probably vouch for that sometimes it's very hard to access support. And there's just not enough out there with accessibility and affordability. So that's where I came in and I tried to create something a little bit different and created Fuel Talk.
Oh, awesome. I was going to ask you how you created Field Talk, so you just kind of dove right into that one. That was like brilliantly, but so and Field Talk's your podcast, correct? Just making sure.
So Fuel Talks actually, it's an emotional support platform. So essentially, if anyone needs any extra emotional support peer to peer, it's a direct access to be able to talk to someone, like right now, rather than
Yeah.
kind of go through the waiting process and the traditional path. I think emotional support and peer to peer and having that friend access is really downplayed sometimes. So that's what Fuel Talk is.
That's awesome. Well, it's so funny you've created that platform because a lot of the times during the last couple of years, I have seen more and more communities grow during this time because we need that human connection, and it's so important to build those relationships, whether it's virtually or in person. It really makes no difference, but in some ways it does because we want to be able to see our authentic selves, and I think you're going to find out from me. I'm as real as you're going to be. I don't pretend to be anyone else. You either like me or you don't, and that's okay. I don't have a problem with either way. So if you like me, keep working with me. If not, you could go find someone else. But that's just my real talk there. But the long story short of it is when you're in those building those communities, it's so important to build those relationships now more than ever. And you do need to create that support system. And I think that's what you're alluding to, is that you need to create that support system because when dealing with, I guess, mental health issues or any kind of health related issues, it's hard to go the road alone. It's much more easier when you have support. I mean, am I on target with that or spot on or?
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. And, we've kind of been facing a lot of challenging times as of recent. Challenging to say the least, but
Mhm.
a lot of isolation actually.
Right.
And that's where, you know, when there is so much isolation, that's when you really realize that importance of having those interactions, having those in-person moments. And what we wanted to do with Fuel Talk was kind of create that real, authentic friendship in a safe space. And it had to be virtual, but at the same time, you don't have to go through like 10 loopholes just to talk to someone.
Right.
So,
No, that makes sense. No, that's perfect. So, and I love the fact that you're just open about this topic because it's so important to talk about it, and I can hear that passion about that. So, and I love how your passion's all about creating connections with other humans, and which is and I love the fact that you're a safe space and non-judgmental, and that's sort of how we are in marketing mindset mastery. And I also have a business academy that we also have that safe space. We don't judge each other. We encourage each other. We uplift each other. We help each other to move forward in our businesses in a very loving, caring, gentle way. And I think that's really what's missing. I don't know if you would agree to that, but I think that's what's missing is because so many people are quick to point fingers, quick to sit there and judge and sit there and say, "Oh my gosh, you need to do it my way," and or you need and there's no one size fits all. You really got to find your groove and find your process and stuff like that. And I don't know, how would you address that? So
yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. Coming from a perspective of someone and, trying to be really authentic with what I went through, um, essentially, you have that background knowledge, of what's actually happening, but you're actually going through it.
yeah,
So when it came to getting help, it wasn't helpful to have that interaction with someone that's in a diagnostic role for me specifically. And when I looked outside the box, I realized that there's tiers to it. And sometimes you need a little bit of that. And sometimes you need someone to not be in that hierarchical role and to be kind of like on the same level as you and not there to kind of assess you or diagnose you and just talk to you. And I
right,
think that's a huge thing that is currently missing in our medical system.
right. I also feel like some of it's also missing in the business side of things too, because we really need to be real people, and we need to have connect on a real human level, and excuse me, and be our authentic selves. And the more we show up as an authentic thing, is because here's what's going to happen: people are going to relate to you as a real human being rather than you pretending to be someone else, or rather you put on your mask because you're trying to hide your symptoms. For example, in some case maybe you're hiding a mental illness, and here's the thing: rather than hide it, own that problem, own that space, and be okay with it, and learn to come to become okay with it. And for example, if you're in a business owner too, you can also do the same thing. Own the fact that, like, I'm the webinar queen, I'm the networking queen, I own my space. I'm not perfect at it, but I own it, and be okay with that. And but it's going to take time to get to that level. And I know this is slightly off topic, but I mean, in a way it's kind of relevant too, because let's face it, I mean, we all have our unique skills and our unique gifts, but we also have things we're facing with mental illness or things we're facing with our health, and it's okay to struggle through things and still become victorious over it. That's really my push for that, is whatever we're dealing with, we could still have a win at the end of the day. And I don't know if you wouldn't mind elaborating on that. I know that's slightly off of what we originally talked about, but yeah, we'll dive into the rest shortly, I'm sure. So anyway, it's just
No,
like it's like a prelude to it.
no, I completely agree. I mean, sometimes what I've noticed in the mental health space especially is that, of course, a lot of focus and a lot of light is being shone on um, the hard parts of it. Like, hey, this thing is difficult, this disease is difficult, this and that is hard to get through, right? A
Mhm.
lot of the focus from from an outwardly perspective is put on that a lot, which is good for awareness and destigmatization, and I'm a huge advocate for it. But also what I'm a huge advocate for is showing through Fealtalk and through the things that I've been through is that there's another side, like there's a light at the end of the tunnel, you know? And I personally, like when I was going through my own struggles, and I'm going to be very real about this,
That's okay.
when you're going through it, you don't really think that it's ever going to get better.
Right.
You know, and I think that's another huge part of what we're trying to do at Fealtalk is show that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And that's kind of, I know like this is preemptive, but that's kind of where our workshops actually come in, is to show that hey, we can still struggle through something, but we can still get to the end with like the proper tools and techniques that I frankly think need to be a little bit more integrated into everyone's lives.
Oh no, that's perfect. And we might even dive into the second half and some tools and techniques. Maybe we could you could share and how to do that. So hold on a second. Let me make a note: tools and techniques, because if not, my little 53-year-old brain might forget. Um, and I say that loosely. So anyway, and like I said, I'm real, and I will always be real. So yeah. So if anyone ever wonders how old I am, there you go. I'm 53, at least until December 15th, and then I changed to another year. So now that brings me to what you do. I mean, that's a good prelude to what we're going to talk about, because we're going to introduce a topic, and you want to talk a little bit about the the uncertain of what is it going to look like after we come out of these uncertain times, and how is it, there's like this certain stress disorder you want to address, and then talk about your free newsletter, and then we are going to go and dive into more topics too at the second segment. So you want to like introduce a little bit? Does that hopefully that is a good question. I kind of was trying to fish around for that one.
No,
So
I totally get it. So yeah, so one of the things that we actually wanted to talk about today was during these uncertain times, there are kind of parallels to PTSD that people are experiencing because of everything that's happened in the last year or two. So what we find is, there's been mass isolation. And that's like a huge part. Not only has there been mass isolation, there's been a lot of people getting sick, and people dealing with the ins and out of grief and associated with those situations. So to say the least, it hasn't been the most pleasant times, and people have now, when you're trying to reintegrate in a new normal sort of way, are finding that maybe some of those same interactions they were having before, same things they were doing before, look a little different now. And maybe we're feeling a little bit different now when we're like experiencing the same things we used to do. So that's kind of what I wanted to start off by talking about. And some of the indicators that you can really look at and identify if this is something that you're experiencing, this form of anxiety, is starting off with you're just more anxious in some of those social interactions that you're having. You can also find that you might be having lower amounts of motivation, feeling hopeless or powerless, like nothing's in your control. Having sleep disruption, that's another indicator. Of course, changes in appetite. And the two main key ones, which we're really finding, is increased irritability and social withdrawal. So how I like to put it essentially is that sometimes you might not notice it, but
right.
those same social interactions that you were having before, now you come home and might be extremely socially exhausted, and might not be putting those two things together and realizing it's because of that. It's because of that, huge saga that we've been through, kind of thing. So those are some of the key factors that you can kind of try to identify with hey, I might be experiencing some sort of PTSD associated with the last 2 years.
Yeah. I noticed with me is, you know me, I'm an outgoing, energetic, high energy person. But I find that if I do enough of these virtual events, I get worn out because and there is such a thing as Zoom fatigue. I'm going to
Yes.
sit there and point that out, and it may not just be Zoom fatigue, it's whatever your conference call fatigue, we'll just do that. And I don't know about anyone else, but if you wear a headset long enough, your ears get warm, and oh my gosh, I'm gonna claim it. It's called the headset fatigue. So anyway, we're gonna put a little funny spin on it. But I mean, seriously, and you get exhausted because you're dealing with an emotional investment in a person. I don't know if that's something that may be connected with that. So when we're coming away from this social withdrawal and we're going into in-person events or even more online events than ever before, um, really quick, how do you handle that change? I know you touched a little bit about what it is, those little indications, but how do you handle the change from in-person and virtual events and going from like being isolated to now we're like being the social butterflies again that we humans are supposed to be naturally. So anyway, so really quick, can you touch on that? And then we're going to have to go to a commercial break, and I'll lead into that in about a couple minutes. So
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing, and this is not only for this, but in general, is always make sure that you have a good support system. So a good support system in place is like having a plan at all times. And that's going to be, if you're struggling with something or you might feel even the slightest thing, talk to someone about it that's close to you, a friend or a family member, and have that, shared like right away when you are feeling those things. And the best thing that is recommended is actually taking slow steps forward. So it's called desensitization therapy. So essentially those bigger social settings, instead of going to those first, start off with something slow for your own self to kind of readjust to. Go to a coffee bar first and, then, go to the park and then maybe perhaps go to the mall. Take slow steps forward and make sure you always are able to listen to yourself and how you feel after those interactions.
no, that's brilliant. I like that because you don't want to jump right in from going from being isolated into a huge major event that might overwhelm your system, especially if you're introverted. But even if you're extroverted and you've been isolated, oh my gosh, it's always good to make sure you ease into things, and that's really well put. And I can't believe the first half of the show needs to be we need to come to the conclusion here for the first half of the show. So I want to thank Dr. Ravi Shear, hopefully I got that correct, and basically for sharing some valuable tips on how to help our audience grow themselves and their business on the Marketing Mindset Mastery Show, and how we can get back to normal is such an important topic, especially during uncertain times. And it doesn't matter what those uncertain times might be for you. So Dr. Ravshir Gill has been agreed to stick around for the second half of our show to answer more questions from our audience and also to continue to give us valuable tips as well as some action tips. So anyway, that ends this segment of our show. You are listening to the Marketing Mindset Mastery Radio Show with your host, Marie Mason, and we will be back right back after this brief message, and we're going to a commercial break now.
We're taking a short break, and we'll be right back. You're listening to Marketing Mindset Mastery, the show that brings you the top speakers in the marketing and video industry, with your host, Marie Mason. The show is brought to you by Liberty Virtual Solutions. We work with business coaches and speakers to help them market and host their webinars and upsell their coaching programs and develop heart-centered relationships with their audience. Welcome back to the Marketing Mindset Mastery Show with your host, Marie Mason, a premier podcast that helps you master your marketing skills.
Oh, I just love that music. Okay, it gets me going. I want to go dancing every time I go. I know we're getting close to Friday. Every time I hear this the music on our show, and I'm like, oh, I just want to go dancing, even if it's in my own my own house or backyard or whatever. But I'm so glad you're back. So welcome back to the Marketing Mindset Mastery Radio Show with your host Marie Mason and our lovely and talented guest, Dr. Rob Gill. Thank you for letting me have a shorter pronunciation because I kept butchering it before. Oh my gosh. I mean, I really work hard at trying to remember y'all's pronunciations, but everybody is different. So anyway, thanks for letting me have it shorter. So she is a doctor and also the CEO of Founder of Fealtalk. She's from Toronto, Canada, and today's topic is on overcoming anxiety and getting back to normal. So make sure you listen to our show at our new time every Thursday. It's Thursdays at 11 a.m. Eastern on the USA, and then we are on W4CY.com radio. So please take it away, and Rav. And thank you for letting me pronounce it in shorter. I really appreciate that. Oh wow, do we have some great topics for you for this segment? segment. So anyway, first topic up is we've been talking about, and an important one is getting back to normal, and how we've been self isolating pretty much for almost the last 18 months, almost 2 years. And we're trying to, and kids are going back to school, parents are going back to in-person work. We're going back to in-person events too. And you gave us some great tips about how to ease into that on the last segment. So if you haven't heard that, check it out and on the replay. But meanwhile, the next question that leads to is how has the lack of social connections affected our mental health? You touched on it a little bit, but I'd like for you to do a deeper dive on that. And we're going to avoid certain terms, of course, because of, various different rules and regulations on different platforms. But without getting into too specifics on the actual uncertain time issue, let's go and dive into that topic real quick.
Yeah, so the lack of social connection is hugely being demonstrated, I think, with, our recent times. If we look back onto how humans, first came about back in the day, even as hunter and gatherers, we were all kind of working as a team, trying to get through life, essentially, right? So what I find is as we, realize the implications of what social connection actually means, it's a huge part of our human experience. So that's a major thing that we've noticed during these uncertain times is that extreme importance of having those social connections, having that human experience, and continuing to keep those bonds going for our basically mind, body, and soul.
No, that's perfect. And I love how you bring in the mind, body, and soul feature because when you're dealing with mental health or with any issues, it's not just one piece of the body. You got to address every part of the person as a whole. Because, like I was saying, when with my show, one of the reasons why we talk about um, things like mental health and anxiety and stress and various different topics that are dealing with the inner you is anything that's going on the inside is going to reflect on the outside, whether it's business or whether it's your personal life. What goes on with you is going to affect every area of your life. So it's always good for us to bring up those topics and bring and shed some light onto it and address those topics and then give people some action steps, which we will do at the end of the show, of course. But that's really good. That's why I'm glad you give I'm glad you give a whole person approach to your practice. I will give you a guarantee. Not every doctor does. So I'm glad you do. I wish you lived closer than Canada. Canada's good, but it's a little too far for me to go up there to go visit you. I'm just saying. Not sure my health insurance covers that trip either. So there you go. But anyway, but I just wanted to bring to light that yes, that's why we bring up these interview topics because um, it's important to address all aspects of your person because we want to make sure that you are at your best when you perform at your business. So that's the whole reason we bring this up. So the next, which leads me to my next question, actually, which is how can I get started building my support system? Because you mentioned that at the previous segment, so I thought that would be a good one to lead into for this part.
Right. So I think we've probably heard this a lot, but before we can fix anything, we have to actually realize that something is wrong.
Right.
In the sense where something might be a little bit broken, might need some extra help. So I think the number one thing that I'm a huge advocate for is having that, coming to that point yourself and realizing that, hey, something might be a little bit off with me, and have that courage from within to know that that's not a bad thing,
Mhm.
and that's not the end of the world, but having that courage and being like, I might need some extra support. So what I find what happens is that people that aren't able to kind of go down that road of healing, it all starts with like actually understanding what the problem is first. So I encourage everyone that I talk to, and I'm the biggest advocate for it because I say it the first, like I'm the first one in line. It's not a bad thing to admit that you have a mental health problem, and that's okay. It's that's the whole aspect of destigmatization, which I feel like really burdens, this space quite a bit, because people just don't feel comfortable into thinking that they might need some extra help with their brain. But if they have a broken arm or a broken leg, then we're okay with taking medication, getting that rehab, and taking those extra action steps. So, step one is owning the problem.
Mhm. Yeah, I was just saying that too in the chat. I was like, "Oh yeah, we're thinking alike." No, it is, and I agree, and that's what we alluded to earlier in the first segment too. Is it's okay to admit that you have a problem, because it's the first step in helping you solve it too, and getting some help. And I found when I started talking about my book that I'm going to be launching hopefully in November. It's at the illustrators right now, so I'm excited. I'm having my first children's book. I wrote it in 1989. It's about learning disabilities, so it's a different kind of health issue, and it still affects the brain and it still affects our mental well-being. So it kind of falls into play here in this particular case. I don't bring it up on every show, by the way, but it just seemed fitting for this one. And one of the things that we address is making better choices and also both for the children to help them make better choices. We're seeing, and the book's all about seeing it through the lens of the child. So whatever, like the first book's on dyslexia, it's going to become a 12-book series. I taught for 20 years, and I'm bringing to light some of the children with learning disabilities and special needs that I came across while I taught for 20 years. So you're getting like firsthand experience of being what it's like to work with these children, and you're seeing it through the lens of the child. So I'm bringing a less clinical point of view and more of this is what they really experience. You're going to see their frustrations. You're going to see why they act out, and it's helping people to really understand that it's they have such unique gifts, but because they're children, especially the younger they are, the less vocal they can be, and they may not know how to sit there and explain their feelings or their situations because they don't understand all the terms. And that's where we as adults have to come in and help them understand that. And I think we really just need a different approach in our educational system on how to handle children with learning disabilities or how to handle mental health, because there's different ways that we can do that and we can improve on that. And I really want to create a movement of, acceptance is a choice, and that we can really accept each other's, differences, and we can make those differences our assets. And value people as real people, and not just looking them as a label of their mental health or their learning disability or whatever it is. Instead of focusing on the problem that they have, focusing on as a real person and really creating that desire if they want to be helped. Because I have a learning disability. It's mild. It's called auditory perception. It's not something I widely publicize, but it's for me to sit here and get on a radio station and talk, you know, is a feat in itself, because auditory perception is you hear something and sometimes it gets garbled in the brain. And that's why sometimes I may have somebody repeat something to make sure I heard you, like your name, I because it may sound differently to me than it would to be an average person. So I always have to just verify things. So I appreciate you letting me shorten your name for that reason. But long story short, I mean, we all have different things we're going through. And you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be yourself. And like you said, own that problem. Make sure you people understand that it's okay. And I think if we just have an acceptance of them as a real person, we don't have to be their best friends, but I'm just saying, just understand that they give value and they add value, even if they are struggling with mental health or learning disabilities or whatever it is that they're dealing with that's out of the normal. And I think we need to, as human beings, need to come up and show up and be more supportive. And I think that's really what my whole movement is trying to create. So I think that's one of the things I'd like to team up with you on, that is the mental health and learning disability part. So anyway, I had to sit there and say that and promote my book, but anyway, and it's coming out. Where the goal is, it's going to come out and launch in November. That's my goal. But anyway, long story short, next question is, what are some good resources? I told you we will get to tools and resources, and to access that help, because that's important too. There's so much support in our community, and you're in Canada and I'm in the US, and I'm sure there's some tips that you could share for other countries. There's every culture has tips on resources that they can access. So you may have to look it up in your country, but could you kind of highlight some really global options for us? That's my way of putting it today.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great question. So just to reiterate on some of the things that you just mentioned with like educational system and just that lack of insight, that is essentially what we're trying to do with our workshops, is have that educational support. I'm sure that some of the listeners listening might have been in that position sometimes where, hey, something is going on. It might be an emergency, it might not, but the mental health system sometimes is so confusing to navigate that they don't even know where to start.
Right.
And that's not just a regular, like average person problem. That happened to me too, someone that was in the system. I was so confused on where to go for help, what to access, and what that actually brought, and what I gained from each avenue. So what our workshops do is help expand on that with an intro to that, and then help teach those tools so you can build your resilience and know to increase your social interactions with everyone else, but also with yourself. And some of those resources specifically that we talk about in our first workshop and how to access is local resources. Local resources are super underrated, I would say. Those are our like local places, non-for-profits that are open, that are there solely to kind of help out in the space. Obviously, we know, the general practitioner is a good place to go if you want that interaction for professional help. When it comes to talk therapy, counseling, and actual therapy, never disregard how powerful that can be in your life, and adding it with peer support stuff. So peer to peer, so emotional support stuff, then that's things like what we do, either in a group setting or a one-to-one, but emotional support being part of your resources. And then daily self-care, which is a huge, big thing that we need to add into our daily lives. You're
And I'm
gonna
guilty. I'm not always good at self-care. I think because as caregivers, when you're a parent, sometimes it's really hard. Or if you're a teacher or if you're a health practitioner of some sort, it's really hard to help focus on yourself when you're giving somebody else that spotlight. You know what I mean? Giving that focus. So that's something I want to ask about. How do you handle that real quick?
um how I handle it is, before it was handled really bad. I'm
Mhm.
going to be very honest, but I've gotten a pretty good routine now, in the sense where I make sure to um, have my daily exercise, meditation times. I add in yoga sometimes where it's needed. And I do actually, practice a lot of journaling sometimes, with things that I might be, particularly feeling. And the biggest thing I think for me which has worked, is making sure to check in with myself.
Yeah. Oh,
So I do little check-ins with post-social interactions, or post if it's a day that's really really busy, I'll make sure to check in throughout the day, and if I need to take a break, I take it,
oh,
which
good.
I
Yeah.
never used to do before.
Yeah, I'm working on that. I'm working on creating some more calendar space on my for my family because I don't know. I'm get so busy and focused on the tasks for my businesses and stuff because I got juggling a lot of different businesses and stuff, including the show and you could get consumed by it in the work. If anyone can relate out there, the workaholics out there, and let me know. I don't even call them perfectionists because I'm a part-time perfectionist. So I'm gonna I like things like organized, like the show scripts and stuff, and make sure that we're on point and everything. But at the same time, I like to have fun, and so I kind of have that balance. But my goal is to create a work-life balance, so that way I can do things like self-care. I can spend more time with family and friends and still be able to have that perfectionist side at my work and get things done but do it in a more efficient time. So I totally, totally get the need for self-care. And I'm still carving time out for that. So there you go. You know, so we all have to do that because it helps
Yeah.
us as human beings feel good about ourselves. And we need to have that validation too, I think, from ourselves. I mean, that would be safe to say. Would you agree? Or
Yeah, so that's exactly one of the topics that we actually cover in our workshops, is listening and validation.
Mhm.
When you're actively trying to listen, try to listen to actually understand rather than just to respond. And then that validation is when you're listening to yourself and how you're feeling and checking in with yourself, you're able to validate yourself as well, throughout the day, which I think really doesn't get done
Yeah,
quite a lot for a
yeah.
lot of people.
Especially when you're focused on business or whether you have a health practitioner and whether you're a caregiver of anything, whether you're a
Yeah.
teacher or a caregiver or whatever, most of the time it's spent on the person you're taking care of and less time on yourselves. And we need to remember that we're important too. It's just like when we go onto an airplane and how we put most of us have not been traveling during the last 18 months, but we are getting back into it more. And so remember when they say to put the mask, when if you're dealing with pressure and changing of altitude, and they sit there and say, "Well, you put the mask on yourself before you put some on somebody else." We have to remember that with self-care, and self-care comes in so many different forms. So I'm glad you gave that examples of what you do for self-care. So because not everybody is clear on that. So that is brilliant. So what are some of the other resources you were talking about and that you talk about on your workshops as well?
So in our workshops in general, like I mentioned, it starts off with an intro to mental health, and kind of an overall roadmap on how to access care. A lot of the times it might sound simple, but it is. It does get confusing with the different providers and what they offer and how to actually access help. And then we go into the tools and techniques, like I mentioned. We go into listening, validation, how to go through your own emotions and emotionally regulate to a point where you're loving yourself and loving all the others around you. And then self-care techniques. And then we do this uncertain time uh post uncertainty anxiety, getting back into it type of workshop as well. So this is a little bit to do with some of that stuff. But I wanted to actually mention for any of the listeners that might want to have some steps to kind of go into on like an overall conclusion on what to take from this convo is number one, identify that there might be something wrong, or you might have something that you might need a little bit extra help with. Number two is try to observe those triggers. There's always certain things, like either it's large social interactions, a specific person, a specific activity. Try to observe what causes distress. So observing triggers is number two. Number three is accept that these times have been hard and there might be some effects of that on you. That is accepting, coming into that acceptance stage that there might be something wrong, and it might be not just you in it, and it
Right.
could be caused during this entire, like,
Challenging time. Yeah.
exactly, because of the challenging time. Fourth is add self-care and try desensitization. And that's some of the stuff that we talked about. And last but not least is always, always, always ask for professional help if you really need it.
Perfect. No, that's awesome. And we're actually towards the end of our show, believe it or not. And you have a quick action step. And then I would like for you to give a quick thing about your gift you wanted to share and how to connect. So those are the last three things. And then we got to go and get ready to close the show, believe it or not. So,
Yeah, so if anyone wants to, be a part of our free newsletter, you can always join at www.fealtalk. It's FEAL talk.com/newsletter. It's a free newsletter that we pull out every month. We have some free blogs on there as well, and also a lot of free meditation content. And if anyone wants to contact me specifically, wants more information about our workshops, or wants more information about our one-on-one support sessions, you can always email us at support@fealtalk.com.
perfect. No, brilliant. Thank you so much, Rob, for being here on today's show. And you were brilliant. I love how we were able to collaborate both with the mental health aspect and the learning disabilities, because let's face it, we all are dealing with some sort of challenge in this day and time. So we just got to be able to own it and be able to overcome it. And there are ways to get that help, and that's one of the things I'm so glad you shared with us. And if you want more tips about how we can um, reach out with you and far as helping you with that, we can definitely share that with our audience, and I can post that as well, because you had some more good resources we can share later. So oh my gosh, you gave us so much valuable tips for helping our audience grow through their mental illness and helping to help us get back to normal after dealing with a lot of uncertainty in the last couple of years. And it's nice to be able to start getting back to normal. Just saying. And it is so good to have you on the Marketing Mindset Mastery Radio Show. Today's topic was all about relationship between your mind and your body, because they are connected. And I want to encourage you to take advantage of getting onto her newsletter at www.fealtalk.com/newsletter, or just getting together and connecting with her, because she's an amazing lady to talk to. And she can give you more resources on the call, I'm sure. So don't forget to go to is it I'm not sure if I have it right. Is it Above and Beyond Coaching? I think I got that wrong. Do I have the wrong link there? I think I've got the wrong link there. Surefire ways to dissolve doubt. Is that your gift?
No, that is
Okay.
not me.
Okay, so go to the newsletter and she can give you some more gifts and tricks and tips and stuff like that on our newsletter. I think that's the best way.
Yeah.
And connect with her on LinkedIn. She's an amazing lady to connect with. And you'll be glad to take advantage of her gift. All the links will be posted on their show's page as well as any of their platforms, including YouTube channels. So make sure you do that. We do have a special offer. Don't forget to check our merchandise shop at the Marketing Mindset Mastery Radio Show shop. So go to libertyvirtualsolutions.com/shop. Check out our school back to school backpacks. Every $45 backpack that gets sold is going to give a $5 gift card to a lucky teacher, starting with Charlottesville, Virginia, and we're going to spread it throughout the world so that they can help put supplies back into the classrooms without that out-of-pocket expense. We will be doing this year long, so please make sure you do that. Right now, we're only operating that shop in Canada and the US, but we'll be branching out soon. I just need to get that taken care of with my web developer, and join us for our next week's episode for some more great tips and ideas and how to make your marketing and mindset work for you. We stream live every Thursday at our new time at 11 a.m. on Thursdays right here on W4CY Radio. So please make sure you like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit that notification button so you don't miss another show. Until next time, this is Marie Mason with our guest, Dr. Ravshir, and then saying goodbye for now on the Marketing Mindset Mastery Show. And that ends this show. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Go to our radio page and check out the gifts from our speakers. We'll see you next time on Marketing Mindset Mastery with your host, Marie Mason.